So my friend Hail Zeon recently made a video talking about the relevance of Piccolo in Dragon Ball Z, and in it he shared a lot of his thoughts and his opinions. And in this video today, guys, I'm going to be giving a video response to Hail Zeon, in which I'll be, I guess you could say, responding to what he said while also putting in my points about Piccolo's relevance in the series, because I respect a lot of the things that Hail Zeon said, but I also think he should have made extra points that I want to talk about. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video, guys. And I have a lot of big projects that I'm working on right now, so I'm just gonna pull a geekdom and just put a picture in the background. I'm gonna make sure it's a cool picture though. So let's start off. Hail Zeon's #1 point in his video was that he thinks that Piccolo's character was truly relevant in the Saiyan Saga, and in many ways I agree with that, because he mentions that Piccolo at that point not only just gave up his life to save Gohan, who was a key cog and a character who helped, defeat Vegeta with, transforming. Gohan was a key factor in the whole Saiyan arc. I can kind of see that happening, and also because of the fact that it was a turning point in his character, because if you look at Piccolo, the stigma of a character that he had beforehand in Dragon Ball was that he was, an evil reincarnation of his father. And then if you look at him at the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, he was kind of on the fence, where it seemed like he was kind of just fighting against the Saiyans, because it was kind of like, well, listen, we're both weaker than these guys, we need to team up. So when Piccolo gave his life up for Gohan, that was a serious major transition in his character. I understand that. But I think that there are certain things that he did in the Namek arc that were unsaid. Let's go to the Namek saga, in which Piccolo was revived, with the use of the Dragon Balls and after he fused with Nail. When Piccolo goes to fight against Frieza in his second form, in some ways, I know Frieza controlled this, all on his own, but Piccolo did stall enough for Goku to, at least, I guess you could say, heal up, and for Vegeta to also get a Zenkai boost with Dende. So, in some ways, he prolonged the Frieza fight long enough for things to work out. And Hail Zeon makes a perfect point in which he says Frieza basically controlled the Namek Saga's destiny, because if you really think about it, Frieza didn't go 100% up until the point where he fought Super Saiyan Goku. So if Frieza actually went 100% from the very beginning, Piccolo, Gohan, Krillin, Vegeta, Dende would have all have been killed instantly. None of them would have stood a chance. Goku would have came out, and unless he goes Super Saiyan right away, Frieza's gonna kill him too. So I could see Hail Zeon's point on that. However, I do want to say that what Piccolo did do that was relevant is when Goku was powering up that Spirit Bomb to fight against Frieza, Piccolo did stall, and that did help Goku gather the Spirit Bomb. Like I said before, we define relevance as different. I look at relevance as, what did this particular character's action do to affect the plot at this key exact point in time, regardless of what we know is going to happen afterwards. So Piccolo helped Goku power up the Spirit Bomb. We know that the Spirit Bomb ultimately failed, but that was still a major thing that he did to at least help Goku out. And if, let's say, the Spirit Bomb hypothetically killed Frieza, well, then that would have given Piccolo's, stalling significantly more relevance. But you guys are kind of seeing the point where I'm going with here. But one thing he did do from just Dragon Ball alone, without using any hypothetical scenarios, is the fact that when Piccolo was in the middle of Frieza shooting that death beam at Goku, and I think that this is a very important thing that's been overlooked, Piccolo didn't die. And you can argue that Piccolo put the Dragon Balls at risk, because if he got killed by that, then that means the Dragon Balls would be gone, and that would have basically screwed everything up in the whole Namek arc. But if Frieza had killed Goku, Goku would have been severely injured or killed, and if he was severely injured, he would have ultimately have been killed. Piccolo You know, he wouldn't have been able to really stand a chance against Frieza, and then Gohan and Krillin would have both died. So if Piccolo didn't jump in the way to help Goku with that death beam, everything would have been bad. And that is a serious relevant act of Piccolo in the Namek Saga that I think really is underrated in terms of how it affected the plot, because everything for a guaranteed fact would have gone down the drain if he didn't make that sacrifice. So we move on from the Namek arc and we go to the Garlic Jr. saga. I don't really want to talk about this much because it's filler. But one thing I do want to say is Piccolo did help in the major fight against Garlic Jr. and his henchmen, especially when he was trying to play like he was one of the bad guys and he was acting like he was under his control. So Piccolo did make a, relevance in the Garlic Jr. arc, and I'm 99% sure Hail Zeon would agree, but we don't really want to talk about filler, so let's move on to the Android saga. He really didn't do anything in the Trunks arc, except for the fact that, he listened into Goku's, conversation with Trunks and interpreted it, pretty well. But, he really didn't do anything except for keeping his mouth shut, which I guess is somewhat minorly helpful, but that's not really relevant. We move on to the early part of the Android arc, in which, obviously Android 19 and Android 20 show up. Now, let me point out that Piccolo was insurance for Goku, because since Piccolo performed very well against Dr. Gero in that fight, that tells me that if, Goku was in trouble against 19, Piccolo would have easily beaten him, especially because Piccolo said this in both the anime and the manga, that he was just about to intervene, but then Vegeta startled him, and that's how he got shot by Gero's blast. But his true relevance, really, I guess you could say he fought Dr. Gero and Gero ultimately escaped, but I guess to some degree, when Piccolo was fighting against, Dr. Gero, he did get the other Z Fighters' attention by telepathically communicating with Gohan, which did bring attention to Gero, and in doing so, he did change the mission, because now all of the Z Fighters gathered to where Piccolo was by, him, getting Gohan to come and bring more attention, and by doing so, now they know. Bulma ultimately figured out, the whole thing about where Dr. Gero was. Now they knew that they had to go hunt him down. The thing is, I can't completely call that relevant though, and I know Hail Zeon would eat me up if I did, because ultimately, if you think about it, the androids were so much stronger than them anyways that it really didn't make an impact that they could find the androids, because they were late to the party anyways. So I'm not going to call that relevant. I just want to say it was interesting that he did bring attention to the android threat. Next, we move on to Piccolo fusing with Kami after everybody got beaten up by the androids. When Piccolo fused with Kami, you can argue, and Hail Zeon made a fantastic point in saying that, Piccolo fusing with Kami is a negative thing because now the Dragon Balls are now linked to him, so he's making the Z Fighters have to do more work in order to get the Dragon Balls functioning. But at the same time, like I said, I look at relevance as what happens at this particular point in time. And at that particular point in time, nobody had gone into the hyperbolic time chamber / room of spirit and time. And Piccolo, knowing that, he's going to put, he's going to do something that he's not willing to do in fusing with Kami to help everybody out. And, he confronts Cell as a result of this. I'm making a video very soon, 2 weeks from now, on why didn't Piccolo, why didn't he just flat out kill Cell from the beginning? And I have more things that I want to go into with that. But briefly, I want to touch upon the point that Piccolo finding out that Cell was from the future made some major impacts in the way that we view Dragon Ball. Because, first of all, he didn't know what he was dealing with. So Cell could have literally have been anything. You kind of need to know who your opponent is. If you just flat out kill him, you can argue, well, yeah, problem solved. But what if there's certain things that are on Earth that we're not aware of? For example, the whole thing about Cell being in that little, that laboratory. If Piccolo didn't gather that information, and if Piccolo wasn't able to extract that from Cell, they wouldn't have known that there was a Cell that was on Earth. Now you can say, yeah, well, that doesn't make a difference because the Z Fighters would have been so strong anyways in the future. You're right about that, but that still eliminated that potential threat, and that was a relevant thing to that particular point in time. We're not counting all of the events that we know are going to happen afterwards. We're just talking at that very moment in time. It was a very good thing to at least indicate to the Z Fighters, hey, we have another Cell that's hidden in this lab. And it gave more insight into what Cell's plans were. So now the Z Fighters know, okay, the androids are an even bigger threat than we thought, because not only are they powerful, but Cell can absorb them and become stronger. So that form of information I felt was very, very relevant. So then we move on to the Android 17 fight. And, this is where Hail Zeon has got me. And I'll man up to just admit it. Piccolo going to fight 17 wasn't the best decision, because remember, Cell can't sense 16, 17, or 18. Because, and number one, Cell was absorbing a bunch of humans at this point in time, so you can also say that Piccolo messed up because he let Cell get away, which was wrong on him, but the information he got was still valuable. What Zeon was saying is that because Piccolo was fighting 17 and using so much power, Cell was able to sense him. And he's like, oh, okay, well then obviously if Piccolo's raising his power this much, he must be fighting something, because he wouldn't be fighting another Z fighter, so it has to be one of the androids. That's what got Cell's attention, and that's what ultimately triggered all of the negative events that happened. And he has completely got me here, because if you think about it, what would Piccolo's best decision have been at that point in time? Fighting 17, or just basically telling him where Goku was? That's a very complicated situation, because you can't just tell him where Goku was, because that would have screwed up the situation a lot. But also fighting the androids, you're giving them, you at least have a shot to destroy him. And if Piccolo managed to destroy 17 by any means, that would have at least reduced the amount of androids that Cell could particularly, absorb. So I can kind of see Zeon's point, but it's a horrible situation anyways, because in one situation you fight 17 and you attract Cell. The other situation, you either get killed by 17 by not saying anything, or tell him where Goku is to screw up the situation even more. So Piccolo made the right decision. It was just the situation where he was forced to make a rough decision that ultimately was negative in both outcomes. And then ultimately, Vegeta and Trunks come out of the HTC, and, both Vegeta and Trunks were more than strong enough to defeat Cell, but they didn't do it. And Krillin definitely had the opportunity to kill 18, but he didn't do it. By the way, check out my video. I'll put it in the outro. What if Krillin, deactivated Android 18? Or so, I went more in depth about how that would have affected the series. So, with Krillin, Vegeta, and Trunks around, they kind of messed things up for Cell. So it ultimately went bad anyways. But the point I'm trying to tell you is he tried to make the best of the situation. In that point, it just didn't work out good regardless. So then, after this, we move on to the Majin Buu Arc. And I mean, really, after that Android arc, the whole thing against 18 and fighting... Android 17 and fighting against Cell, you look at the rest of the Cell Saga. I mean, he fought, Cell Juniors. He tried to train in the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, but that really didn't make a big difference. What I would say, though, that I do think is kind of important is he tried to help against, Cell in the anime, at least, when Gohan was having that Kamehameha clash. That didn't happen in the manga. Gohan just fought him by himself. But I mean, really after that, he really didn't make any relevance, and because of the whole Dragon Ball thing, he kind of hurt that. So I can see Zeon's points there. But after this, we move on to the Bhoot Arc, and really, if you really think about it, I mean, outside of injuring Babidi, and Piccolo didn't finish him off, he should have finished him off. Piccolo really didn't do anything really relevant in the Buu Saga outside of training Goten and Trunks. As a matter of fact, you can argue that he screwed up situations more, even though he tried to do his best, because of the whole thing where he blew up the hyperbolic time chamber entrance, and that was negative, but he did it with the best intention that he thought Gotenks was using all of his power. So you can't completely blame him for that, but that was a negative thing he did. And really, I mean, the whole thing about teaching fusion, I mean, Krillin, Master Roshi, I don't think Bulma could have taught fusion, but I think Krillin or Master Roshi could have taught the boys fusion, you know, just like any other character. So I can't really say anything too much there. So I mean, anybody could have done that. Piccolo was just the best option because he has a lot of experience in combat, and you know, he's a martial artist, and he's a good trainer. But I mean, really, he really did make it a big difference in the Buu Saga. I'm trying to really think of things, and I literally just can't think of anything really major he did in the Buu Saga outside of destroying the hyperbolic time chamber, which was negative, even though he had good intent. So he wasn't relevant in the Buu Saga at all. Like, really so minor to the point where it was laughable. And he actually made Super Buu a bigger threat by being off guard. And, you know, Piccolo is known as a guy who's very smart, but he basically was caught off guard with, you know, the whole, you know, absorption thing, and he was absorbed. So Piccolo screwed up there too. So with all that said, I mean, he wasn't relevant in the Buu arc. It's laughable what he was in GT or Super, and I'm actually making a video that's going to drop tomorrow about that. I mean, he wasn't relevant in either Super or GT. He made a sacrifice for Gohan in Super, which was good. You know, we already know what happens with Frost, and the whole thing with GT, he only showed up 4 times in the entire series. Baby Gohan, when Earth is going to explode, helping Goku escape from hell, and, you know, saying goodbye to Goku. That's the only points of the series where he even showed up. So he was really irrelevant there, but he did make a good sacrifice with the Black Star Dragon Balls, and giving up his life for Gohan, you know, in Super was good too. So really, he wasn't relevant at all in those. They reduced his usage significantly. So with all that said, guys, you know, this has been, you know, an extended video response, and, you know, I basically think that Piccolo has done some things, especially with the points I made in the Namek Saga and the Android Saga, to say that he was relevant, you know, at least in those 2 arcs to a moderate degree. I don't think you could say he was irrelevant in the Namek or the Android Saga, but I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. I really had to think about a lot of these things, and, you know, Hail Zeon and I are cool, and you know, we have no beef against each other. We just have a disagreement in opinion, and I want you guys to do me a favor. Pause this video right now, go into my description and go check out his channel. Please subscribe to this guy. This guy is awesome. You won't find a more honest person than Hail Zeon. If you thought I was honest in that clickbait video, check out Hail Zeon. He really is the realest mofo in the Dragon Ball community. He makes great content, and he's critical for the right reasons. So I hope you enjoyed my video for today, and most importantly, over everything else, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and check out my intro to check out some videos that you may not have seen from my channel already. And to include my hashtag of the day, I have one for you. Hashtag Piccolo the GOAT.